I'm Mark Zinni, coming up this morning here on CT23. As we mark the one-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine, Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal is joining us. He's talking about his recent trip to Germany, where he saw U.S. soldiers from Connecticut training their Ukrainian counterparts. We're also looking at efforts right here in our state to support the Ukrainian people. Myron Kalinsky is joining us to look back at the past year. And we'll also have the very latest on the investigation into Stone Academy, what's being done to help students and faculty after the sudden closure of all 3 local campuses. It's all this final Sunday of February. CT23 starts right now.
From Channel 3, CT23 with Eric Parker.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mark Zinni. It is 1 year ago Friday that Russia invaded Ukraine in what Vladimir Putin described as a special military operation. The Ukrainian people, its president, and the military did not give up or give in. They continue to fight, more determined now than ever, with the support of the United States and NATO. Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal is just back from a trip in Germany where he was able to see U.S. troops training Ukrainian fighters firsthand. And the senator is joining us here in the studio this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Let me start with your trip. You just got back. What did you see? You went to Germany, right, as part of your trip overseas?
I went to Germany to attend, first of all, the security conference called the Munich Security Conference, where I talked to the foreign ministers of our NATO allies, and they are rock solid behind Ukraine. But then I visited the U.S. Army base in Bavaria, where our American troops are training the Ukrainian warfighters. And it was really profoundly moving because I spoke to these young Ukrainian men and women who were training on the Bradley vehicles that we have there, the armored vehicles, as well as the combined forces. And as one of the generals, American generals, said to me, you know, I look at these young people and I know some of them are not coming back. They are determined. They are fiercely brave. And they are using our weapons to fight for their homeland. And it's our fight, not just their fight. We don't want American troops there, and they don't want us to put American men and women on the ground, but we need to give them what they need in terms of weapons to win this war, as though there were American troops there.
And they are determined no matter how long this takes, right?
You know, President Zelensky once said to me, we're going to fight the last person, even if it's with pitchforks. And that's the can-do spirit. It very much is reminiscent of our own military. And some of the senior American officers there said they looked at these young men and women and they were so profoundly and deeply impressed by their determination. They're not going away, just as President Zelensky was offered a ride out of Ukraine, and he said, don't send a plane, send ammunition. And that's their spirit as well.
And we continue to do that right now. Obviously, the president was also there this past week. Were you glad to see that happen? And what do you think that did for the morale of the people in that country?
What I've observed, Mark, when I've been there, and I've traveled to Ukraine 3 times over roughly the past year, is it is enormously uplifting for the people of Ukraine to see Americans. And it doesn't have to be a president, a senator, ordinary, everyday Americans visit there and express their solidarity. But the president's visit was something special. You know, I've ridden the train. You have to take a train. You can't fly into Kyiv. Overnight, roughly 10-hour train. I did it with Senator Graham, Republican colleague from South Carolina. The two of us have visited on 2 occasions now. And it's an arduous overnight journey. Then you're on the ground for 10 hours, as we were. The president was slightly less. But what he said to the people of Ukraine about our standing with them, that Ukraine was a test for us and the NATO alliance, I think profoundly impacts the people of Ukraine. And what it does also is send a message to Putin, because his objective is to fracture us, divide us. He's hoping we'll lose our resolve. I don't think that will happen. I think we'll have bipartisan resolve to stand with Ukraine. It also sends a message to China. If they're thinking about taking Taiwan, they better think twice, because America will come to the aid of nations that are fighting for our freedom. And I think that point is really important, that Ukraine is stopping Putin. If he's not stopped, he will keep going. And if he keeps going, we have a NATO treaty obligation to those nations who may be attacked by him next, whether it's Finland, Sweden, Poland, Estonia, Latvia. We have an obligation to stand with them.
Do you think that is a real concern right now, that he could potentially move into another country? I know you were at this security conference that you had mentioned as well. Was that a focus on what will we do as a NATO alliance if that were to happen?
Very definitely, and I think that's really a key point. If you talk to the Baltic states or Finland, Sweden, other countries that are really facing Russia close and personal across their border, and they've been invaded and occupied by the Soviet Union, as it was called then. They know firsthand the brutality, the savagery, the atrocities, war crimes, genocide. You know, the president said Putin has committed crimes against humanity. That's exactly what he's done. I visited the graves at Bucha, where women and children were hands tied behind their back, shot in the head. Hundreds of them. That's Putin's style. He's a thug. He understands only military force. And again, it is our freedom that Ukraine is defending, because we will be obligated to put troops on the ground if, in fact, he goes against NATO countries.
You mentioned the bipartisan support. I know the minority leader, Senator Mitch McConnell, has said that, you know, the money that's being spent, he supports. We're talking now, and correct me if I'm wrong, more than $112 billion was a number I found online. What do you say to those who say this is too much? We can't be spending all this money overseas like this.
It's an investment. If we invest now and we show Putin that he can't just divide us, that we have the resolve to stand up to him, we will actually save money, because at some point we'll have to stop him. And it will be more costly then than it is now. And here's the other point. I'm not asking for a blank check, nor is President Zelensky. We want a big check, but we also want accountability. I visited with 101st Airborne, the logistics officers who are keeping track of our military equipment as it's sent to Ukraine. No waste, no fraud. They're auditing. We do need to have oversight and accountability so that there is no waste. But we have delayed with these weapon systems, the Javelins and the Stingers, then the HIMARS, long-range artillery, then the Patriot missile system and tanks. We can't delay further, because time is not on our side. And
we don't have a lot of time right now, but I do want to ask you lastly, a year from now, where do you think we will be?
It's going to be a bloody hard slog. Russia has begun its offensive. And Bakhmut is an example of how they just leave rubble. Mariupol. They have no respect for human life. They have launched their missiles at hospitals, schools, apartment buildings. It's going to continue. But the Ukrainian people are not giving up. They're not going away. And a year from now, my hope is that we'll have peace, that Putin will be convinced that he cannot simply do the kind of war crimes that he has done and occupy territory with abandon, and that he will, in fact, give Ukraine the country back.
Senator Richard Blumenthal, thank you very much for being here with us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mark.
We continue our conversation on Ukraine coming up in our next segment. We are talking about the efforts in Connecticut over the past year to help the people of Ukraine. And later on in the program, the latest on efforts to help the students of Stone Academy. We'll be right back.